mag-start na.
Good morning, Sir Arman.
Good morning, Ma'am Ban.
Thank you,
so good na?
for joining us today. Thank you, Kayo.
No problem, no problem. Welcome kayo. So good na?
Yes,
Okay.
sir. Yes,
Okay.
nato ni MC.
Sige. So magkuha na kong cue diri, Ma'am Ban.
Oh, wait lang, sir.
Okay.
I-introduce ko po kami, Ma'am Michelle. Thank you, sir.
Okay, welcome.
Ay, bilang si Sir Abu. We would like to encourage our participants and viewers who are watching via YouTube Live to post your questions in the comment section after the session. A beautiful morning to all. Our Dean of the College, Dr. Amelia T. Buwan, chairpersons of the different department of the College of Education, our participants who are TVET teachers, TVL, TLE teachers, our very dear students, good morning and welcome to our webinar series, Session 2, with the theme Technical Vocational Education in an Innovative and Flexible Modality, hosted by the Department of Technology Teacher Education, College of Education, MSU-IIT. Our session 2, entitled The Teaching of Technology Education Subjects in the Time of Pandemic, will be explained by our very competent speaker who will be introduced later. To formally start this webinar series, we will have our opening prayer and the singing of the Philippine National Anthem through a video presentation.
Nawa'y maging gabay, saan man magtungo, tuwing nalulumbay, ginhawa ng puso. Itong aming dasal kapag naliligaw, kami akayin mo sa landas na wasto, kung saan patungo sa iyo. Ang among pag-ampo, o Diyos, dungga kami sa mata kayo. Ikaw ang kahayag Give us faith so we'll be saved. Manalangin namin kami ay papalain na kahit sa dilim nawa'y makita liwanag ng pag-ibig mo, dakila at di na mawalay sa iyong gabay. O Diyos, aming hiling, as the light bigay, yapang daigdig kami alagaran, ang buhay na lagi sa iyong kasaling, puspos ng iyong pag-ibig hanggang sa utulo, aming panalangin. Among pag-ampon tulad ng isang pasiling, just like every child, samtang naapamig, kami akayin mo. Give us faith so we'll be saved. Ang nasa mundo, kami akayin mo. Kung saan patungo sa
Mga kababayan, ang pambansang awit ng Pilipinas.
Once again, we would like to encourage our participants and viewers who are watching via YouTube Live to post your questions in the comment section after the session so that your questions will be answered by our speaker. Today, we are graced with a very powerful speaker. To get to know him more, let us welcome the Assistant Dean of the College of Engineering and Technology, Professor Arman S. Marajas.
Magandang araw po sa ating lahat. Ako po si Professor Eman S. Marahas, Assistant Dean ng College of Engineering and Technology at natahasan magpakilala sa taga-presenta sa webinar na inorganisa ng College of Education ng MSU-IIT sa araw na ito. Nagtataka po kayo kung bakit nagtatagalog po ako, pero may halo po itong English. Dahil alam ko po, na buong bansa ang makakapanood at makikinig sa kagalang-galang at napakagaling na presentor natin ngayong araw na ito. So it is my honor to present to you our speaker for today. He is no other than Dr. Gaspar S. Gayona, Regional Director of Region 6, and his office is located at TESDA Regional Office, Zamora Street in Iloilo City. Now, here's the summary of educational accomplishment of Dr. Gayona. Dr. Gayona has a Doctor of Education and also has Doctor of Philosophy in Organization Development. He is an honorary fellow of the Royal Institution Singapore and Doctoral Fellow of the Royal Institution of Public Administrator, Doctoral Fellow of Royal Institution of Management, Doctoral Fellow of Royal Institution of Technologies, Doctoral Fellow of Royal Institution of Educators, and Doctoral Fellow of the Royal Institution of Researchers, and Royal Institution International Visiting Professorial Fellow, Senior Fellow of the Philippine Public Safety College. And this is, or these are his area of expertise. He's an expert in strategic planning, organizational diagnosis, management of change, educational management, monitoring and evaluation, impact assessment, corporate planning, leadership development, organizational development, competency-based performance management, and curriculum development. Now, here is the educational background of our speaker. He is a graduate of AP Philosophy at St. Peter's Seminary, San Jose Antique, St. Anthony's College. Graduate Studies, Sacred Theology, completed the required units, and passed a comprehensive exam in Masters in Sacred Theology, focusing on social ethics, cum laude, at Divine Word Seminary in Tagaytay City, Cavite. He has a Master in Development at Asian Institute of Management, Makati City, and also has a PhD in Organization Development at Southeast Asian Interdisciplinary Development Institute in Antipolo City. He also has a Doctor of Education he obtained at University of Southeastern Philippines in Davao City. Isa pang personal na tumatak sa aking isipan ay nung una ko siyang makilala sa Davao City, na isa siyang main speaker ng Philippine Quality Framework, specifically sa PQF Level 5. Nadatapwat nasa PQF ng edukasyong pambansa ay di nabigyan ng pagtuon dahil ang senior high school ay hanggang PQF Level 4 lamang at ang kolehiyo naman ay PQF Level 6. Natandaan ko po nung panahong yon na sa kasagsagan ng pagbalangkas ng K-12, tinatapos pa niya ang doctoral in education sa University of Southeastern Philippines. Doon po ginanap ang pambansang pagpupulong sa PQF sa Davao City. Ay nagpamalas po siya ng husay sa kaalaman nito sa Dublin at Sydney Accord na dapat mabigyan diin sa pagbabalangkas ng curriculum para sa technicians at engineering technology program. Sa husay ng pagpresenta niya sa aspeto at pagbalangkas ng curriculum, ay dito siya hinangaan ng mga nakikinig sa kanya roon. Doon ko po napag-alaman ng kanyang dissertation ay pagbuo ng diploma program for mechanical engineering technology para sa PQF Level 5. At ang produkto nito ay naisakatuparan na, at kahit sa Regional Training Center ng Iligan City ay nagsimula na noong huling semestre ng pasokang 2019-2020. Kaya di po ako nagtaka nang i-appoint siyang Chair of National Task Force on the development of PQF Level 5 qualification. At ngayon po ay malaki na ang pinagbago ng kagawaran sa pagpapatakbo ng BOCTEC program na may pagkakahawig tulad ng 3-year diploma in engineering technology ng MSU-IIT. At tatandaan ko pa po, ang panahong iyon ay bumisita siya rito sa atin, specifically sa College of Engineering and Technology, para makipagkolaborasyon. Salamat po sa pagbisita niyo sa amin at sa pagpupugay po sa presentor natin na siya ang nagbigay daan sa TESDA na magbago ng landas nito tungo sa vocational technical education. Salamat po sa presentor natin sa araw na ito. Dahil sa advokasya niya sa PQF Level 5, nabigyan din po ako ng puwang na makatulong sa TESDA as invited speaker ng TESDA Region 10 sa Cagayan de Oro para makibahagi ukol sa Engineering Alliance at PQF or Philippine Quality Framework at Asian Quality Framework. At ang Diploma of Engineering Technology Curriculum noon sa Cagayan de Oro. Tulong na rin po ito ng MSU-IIT para sa TESDA at dahil po sa inspired din po ako sa ginawang effort ng ating presentor na naglibot sa buong Pilipinas para magsalita at tulungan mabalangkas ang curriculum that fill the gap sa PQF na ito. Ang mga programang Vocational Technical Education sa PQF Level 5. Kahit sa panahon po ng pandemya, ay di po tumitigil ang presentor natin sa advokasya niya sa pagtataguyod sa technology education. At mayroon po siyang YouTube channel dito. Pasensya na po at hirap na rin yata ako sa pananagalog ko. But gusto ko lang po ma-introduce ang presenter sa webinar sa araw na ito sa ating pambansang pananalita. Natulad ko rin po, ay marunong din siyang ng salitang o ng dialect na Karaya, Ilonggo at Cebuano. So, akong ginapakilala sa inyo ang atong utod na taga Mindanao na presentor karon hapon na si Dr. Gaspar Gayona. Sir, the internet cloud is now yours.
Good morning. Marinig ba? Marinig ako? Good morning.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Malinaw po, sir.
Yes, sir. Madunggan ka, sir.
Malinaw po, malinaw.
Thank you. Maganda yung hindi ka marinig para walang masyadong tanong. Pero
Okay, sir.
how I wish I could be with you face to face, but the pandemic is preventing us. But anyway, this is also an opportunity for us to learn more about what's going on and what had been the reforms in education, most especially because we had been emphasizing the science and technology as a very, very foundation, even in technical education. Theories need to be learned in order to be applied, or theories have to be developed as we apply or as we perform things. So allow me to share my presentation. It's quite long, but I hope I could finish this. But as I always do when I was still teaching, I prepare I prepare a 2 semester learning materials, even though I'm delivering only a 3 hour presentation. So allow me first to share. Where is it now? Share. Turn on captions. Oh, tab. Oh, sorry. Window. Okay. Share now. Share now. Share. Okay, can you see my presentation now? Makita ba? Makita? Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
sir.
Okay, so the topic that you have given me is the teaching of technology education subjects in the time of pandemic. But I opted to go through the changes first in education before we go into this how technology education could be taught. Because we are facing reforms in education. Reforms that had been with us for so long a time, but we waited for pandemic to come before we realized that there is a shift in the way education or learning has to be undertaken. I usually don't use teaching anymore as the term, but I already use learning as the shift. So this is the outline. So the future of education, what is the role or what are the roles of the teachers, 21st century learning, then 21st century pedagogy, what does it mean for teachers' competencies. And I love to share this to teachers because I come from a family of teachers. Practically, I believe 4 of my younger sisters who are teachers are here joining, and my mother was a retired teacher also. So who is the effective educator in the 21st century? Teaching in the fourth industrial revolution. Then we go into the meat of the topic, teaching and learning in science and technology. And then I would like to share also the skills implementation of the different economic or different drivers of change in education. And this does not only cover Tibet, of course, but the whole of the education system. And the last is the thinking curriculum. I included this because for me, that's very, very important at this point in time as we observe the young people who are stepping out of the learning process or the learning institutions, doing things as if nothing, there are no consequences to what they are doing. So I would like to emphasize the role of the thinking curriculum in the way we hone minds, hearts, and the whole being of our younger generations. So first, I'll go into the future of education, and these are the 8 key trends that are driving change in the world of education. These trends will eventually define the size, scope, and speed of the emerging new system, along with the characteristics needed for a global scale adoption. For so long a time, education has traditionally consisted of the two fundamental elements of teaching and learning, with a heavy emphasis on teaching. However, throughout history, the transfer of information from the teacher to the learner has been done on a person-to-person basis. A teacher stands in front of a room and imparts the information for a student to learn. Because this approach requires the teacher to be an expert for every topic that they teach. This is referred to as the sage on stage form of education. While lecture type teaching has been used for centuries to build today's literate and competent society, it ends up being a highly inefficient system. The education system, okay, so the education system has to shift from teaching to learning. Will undergo transition from heavy emphasis on teaching to a heavy emphasis on learning. Experts will create coursewares and the students will learn anytime or anywhere at a pace that is comfortable for them, learning about topics that they are interested in. Thus, this will require also shift in the role of the teachers as guides and coaches. And for in recent time, we have been experiencing the exponential growth of information. So we have gone from that time just 500 years ago where information was precious and few to today, a time where information is so plentiful that we feel like we are drowning in it. There is an information overload. However, we still see many of the same information control issues permeating society today. Elite members of society still control the flow of information, perpetuating the notion that only doctors can understand medicine, only physicists can understand how the universe works, and only teachers know how to prepare us for the world to come. And there are many ways to talk about the rapid growth of information that we have experienced over the past few years. But it is important to pay attention to the changing dimensions of information as well as the sheer volume of it. Information is no longer just text-based but graphical, musical, audio, and visual. Without bragging to the participants, I have 18,000 ebooks in my e-library. But in my journey to continuous learning, I am now downloading video lessons and audio lessons, which is more, it is easier to carry with me in my iPhone or in my iPad. So there is still a courseware vacuum. After viewing the data above and thinking about the size and shape of information around the world, now consider the number of courses available, either online or in a classroom. So information is exploding around us in every possible form. Yet we do not have an easy way to translate these blocks of information into courseware. While some attempts are currently being made to unleash the public on this problem, we remain a long way from solving the problem. A lot of our learning facilitators, I don't call them teachers anymore, I don't call them trainers anymore, but learning facilitators, as we have seen in the shift of the role of the teachers being a guide or being a coach. And there are still a lot of learning facilitators who are struggling in using technology in teaching. And according to the New York Times, there are an additional 20,000 new words added to the English language every year. The primary driver behind this ever-expanding dimension of vocabulary is the ongoing development of science and technology. Along with the creation of new science and technology comes the need to explain its attributes, its function in technical terms, and its overall purpose. New words and their associated colloquialisms help create meaning and structure around the emerging new concepts as they attract more research and come into focus. And at this point in time, it's easier now to access meanings of the terms because before we still have we place our thick dictionary beside us in our table while we are reading or while we are learning. Now we can put it in our phones and we can just open our Webster dictionary when we need it. Okay, so our touch points for interfacing with society are changing, even in education. So touch points are the places where we come in contact with the rest of the world. Now, how does our mind, the question that we ask is that how does our mind interface with the rest of the world and how can we improve the touch points to improve our abilities? Before, we consider the classroom as the best or the most efficient touch point of learning. Today, And this is still what we are looking for at this point in time. I think one of the reasons why our enrollment at this point in time is very, very slow because people are still looking to go back to the classrooms. Yeah, because it's still dominant central fixture of today's educational system. However, classroom-centric education is not necessary for learning. Okay, because what is important at this point in time is the new touch point of our minds. So we have Google, we have cloud, and so many development in technology. And this is the challenge practically facing us as we shift into what we call flexible learning, which will be explained to us by Director Elsid, I think, in his own presentation. I included that here in my presentation, but when I asked him if he will include it, he said it will be the focus of his presentation. So I didn't include it anymore. So these are now the touch points of our minds, and this is practically the challenge that we are facing in shifting to the flexible uh, mode of learning. People are just waiting for the normalization so that they can go back to the traditional way of learning process. But I always emphasize in any of the forum that I attended that we cannot go back to the past anymore. Education has changed, the process of learning has changed, and there are a lot of opportunities for our learners to access learning. This is in line with the Socratic philosophy of a teacher-less education. And because Socrates, one of the famous philosophers of the past, emphasized that every individual has a lot of resources and control and power to manage their own learning. It's only to provide our learners an opportunity to manage their own learning facilitated by the learning facilitators. And there are a lot of temptations to our learners today. Maybe instead of opening their learning materials in their e-learning platform, they open first their Facebook and other things or Netflix. These are the disturbances. I'm not saying that these are bad. I'm saying that if we want to continue with our learning, we must have our own focus. Okay, so we go now to the learning drivers. So why do people need to learn? Why do people want to learn? What are their motivations? And what are the drivers that control a person's desire to fill their minds with knowledge and information? Okay, it still depends on the situation, of course. And well, we are all familiar with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Okay, so Maslow's basic position is that as people become more self-actualized and self-transcendent, they develop wisdom and automatically know what to do in a wide variety of situations. His ultimate conclusion that the highest levels of self-actualization are transcendent in their nature may be one of his most important contributions in this area of study. But I also would like to emphasize that it's also very, very difficult to let go of what we have already known. But I always emphasize this in a lot of discussions I had that learning must continue and learning must not end. There are a lot of things that still needs to be discovered, and science and technology will be very, very instrumental in this. Experiential learning is very important. Using experiments, of course, to generate new knowledge is very, very important. And what we know today might no longer be valid tomorrow as researchers continue to expand, focusing on new trends or new discoveries or new realities in our life. And but of course, the age of technology also strengthened this age of hyper individuality. As a society, we are less and less interested in the status competition involved in keeping up with the Joneses. We are not all that concerned about what kind of car our neighbor drives, what kind of TV they are watching, or what kind of cell phone they are using. Instead, we are much more concerned about finding products that will satisfy our own particular needs. We live in an era where we are approaching 100 million products in the marketplace and maybe more. And depending on how you define a product, some would argue that we have already far exceeded that number. Suffice it to say that we now have products that are much more aligned with the needs of a very wide range of consumers, and consumers are voting with their debit cards for uniqueness and individuality. So much so that we have dubbed this age as the age of hyper individuality. And this is the one also that will remain to be a challenge also as we move towards this flexible learning, because in the classroom it's easy to divide our students into groups to go through the process of collaborative learning, of sharing what they know and how they interpret things. At this point in time, we really have to struggle in providing such kind of atmosphere or environment where our learners, using the technology, can confer with each other and undergo the process of collaborative learning. Okay? And also, there's a transition from consumers to producers. A lot of companies are already experiencing this because of the shift from customer service to customer experience. A lot of products are produced specific to a specific requirements of a particular consumer. No? As we transition from a predominantly passive society to a more active one, people no longer want to just sit on the sidelines and watch. They want to participate. And a whole new generation of tools and equipment are allowing people to shift the role from consumer to producer. This transition began with the introduction of comment sections at the end of online news posts. People began to voice their thoughts on whether or not a piece of news was accurate, timely, or anyways newsworthy. Many commenters added additional information. And this is a challenge to all our learning facilitators. I think our forum today is facilitated by the College of Education. And as we hone the competence of our future teachers, we also have to face this challenge. We are no longer in a traditional environment where students are just with open eyes and open mouth listen to whatever the teachers are throwing to them. Today, we hear students already forwarding some of their ideas based on their experiences or based on their own researches. And as I've said, the opportunity for technology aided learning has opened the gateway for students to go on in advance of their subject matters and even go deeper into the content beyond what is in their syllabi or in their learning materials. So as we transition, this transition began with the introduction. While each of these are examples of runaway success stories, the world of user-generated content is not without its own set of problems. Each has managed to handle the challenges in their own unique way. But what these examples best illustrate is the public's driving need to participate and lend their own thoughts and ideas to the world around them. And this is very beautiful as we, or very important as we discuss the 21st century skills, most especially on the significance of problem solving, decision making, and critical thinking. And this is where our learning facilitators have to prepare themselves and continue their own reading and research. Because when I was taking my doctorate in education, I was observing my classmates who are teachers, very young teachers, who are now reached the apex of their learning process, taking their own doctorate. When I asked them, how do you prepare your syllabi? And when our professor asked them to give a critique on the modules of K to 12, the response that we received or we heard from our classmates who are teachers were, we just receive it from the central office. But that's the challenge. All of us receive inputs from our central offices. But how we expand what we receive, how we analyze, how we introduce new learning based on the level of experience of our learners, remain to be a challenge to all of us. Because as we say, nothing, no one size fits all in all our endeavors, most especially in education. Now we go into the role of teachers now. Teachers will have many good options to consider as the changes begin to happen. Some teachers will remain with the school buildings and work more as guides, coaches, and tutors for students needing help. Others will move into event planners and experience designers as each facility experiments with the re-engineering the social side of learning. So other teachers will choose to develop their own learning camp or series of camps. Learning camps will specialize in a special experimental topic that is tied to specific courseware. These teachers will effectively operate their own enterprise with revenues driven by the number of students opting to go to their camp. Now, what is the challenge of our process at this point in time? Our young students who are taking education must also equip themselves with the integration of the information and communication technology. As I believe that would be the common or basic competency that every one of us has to learn. Sometimes myself, as I reflect, as I grow in age, I'm sad because I cannot cope up with the changes in technology anymore. I use as much as I can use. I learn as much as I can learn. But of course, age will always overtake our capacity. Okay? So, some of the more entrepreneurial minded teachers may choose to become full time courseware producers. The techniques for creating good and effective new courseware will be an iterative process going through multiple evolutionary stages as new and better tools become available. And of course, this also brings us to one of the very, very important uh, elements or very, very important context in our uh, practice of our profession as learning facilitators. Before, we know, of course, that before the changes in curriculum happens every 5 years. Because at that time, of course, our presumption is that technology changes every 5 years. But it's not true now. Technology, the changes in technology happens in a flick of a moment, and that curriculum sometimes cannot cope up. Even in our side of the education system, which is the technical education and training, we also have to look into the competency standards, and at this point in time, in quotation mark, our training regulations. Most of the times, the consequence of the fast changes in technology is that the curriculum, almost all the time, because of standardization, stagnate and lag behind the changes in technology. Okay, so how do you define the 21st century learning? There. So we have to strengthen all of this, and that's why we have to encourage, and we have really to create an environment, most especially at this point in time when we are shifting to flexible learn, to provide an environment, challenge, and motivation to our learners to manage their own learning. Now, this might not come in 1 year or 2 years or 3 years. That's why UNESCO emphasizes the one of the pillars of learning, which is learning to learn, meaning lifelong learning. We cannot stop from learning until our last breath. Okay, so let's look at what some of the authors or some of the experts are saying. Powerful learning of this nature demands well-prepared teachers who draw on advances in cognitive science and are strategically organized in teams in and out of cyberspace. So we still are emphasizing, of course, collaborative learning, even team learning among our teachers. Many will emerge as teacherpreneurs who work closely with students in their local communities while also serving as learning concierges, virtual network guides, gaming experts, community organizers, and policy researchers. There's one diploma program here in Negros Occidental That's purely online. That is a diploma in agribusiness technology. And they are now using virtual farms. And I hope that this will spread all throughout the country, as we emphasize and even Tesla is prioritizing agriculture at this point in time. So that even these e-learning modules in agriculture could be brought into communities to expand numbers or population of those who will be able to access to the new knowledge and processes in agriculture, and fast track also our journey towards food sufficiency or food security. According to Sarah Brown Wessling, 21st century learning embodies an approach to teaching that marries content to skill. Now, I will discuss further on this topic when we reach the skills requirements of the different drivers of change. Creating learners who take intellectual risks, fostering learning dispositions, and nurturing school communities where everyone is a learner, including the learning facilitators. And that's why when I was still teaching, while I was taking my doctoral degree in education, I was teaching at the same time. You know, I prepare all these learning materials, give it to the students, give it to the learners, and I arrived on Saturdays, I was wondering why they are silent, and everybody was waiting for me to open my bag, which I didn't bring with me, to open my laptop and my multimedia to present the same learning materials that I've already printed or I already uploaded in their email addresses. Now you see, so I told them, no, without, of course, without bragging, I told them, you are already a doctoral degree students. You are supposed to be the ones managing your learning, and you are supposed to be the ones already driving the discussion inside the classroom so that I can learn from you as well. Now, so from the younger age, from their basic education up to that level, they have been spoon fed with a lot of knowledge, a lot of knowledge that they can no longer discuss inside the classroom. And I was telling them that's not supposed to be the value of a doctoral student, because this point in time you can just open your internet, you can download any topic practically. Just have to be careful with your analysis, of course, because those are topics that are raw and are not yet results of researches, but ideas of people who have encountered a certain thing in their life or certain experience in their life, come up with an idea and throw it in the internet. And it's nice to analyze all those things, but you have only to develop your own critical analysis. Okay, for Karen Kator, educators can leverage technology to create an engaging and personalized environment to meet the emerging educational needs of these generations. No longer does learning have to be one size fits all or confined to the classroom. The opportunities afforded by technology should be used to reimagine 21st century education, focusing on preparing students to be learners for life. And the picture there illustrates, of course, what it means. Okay, what does it mean for teachers' competencies? Okay, so what is 21st century pedagogy? 21st century pedagogy aims to develop the skills and knowledge students need to succeed in work, life, and citizenship. And this is what we do not have to forget, the citizenship, because education does not only develop the competence of people in order to earn. We also have to look into or answer the question, what will these individuals become as members of their families, members of their immediate communities, members of their society, responsible and productive members of the global citizenship. 21st century skills can be applied in all subject areas and in all educational, career, and civic settings throughout a student's life. Schools need to implement new ways of teaching that reflect a changing world. Teachers should use in school time to teach students how to find, interpret, and use information rather than just present information. And even at this point in time, even the definition of school has already changed. I always believe wherever learning happens, that's the school. It's not no longer confined in a four corner infrastructure. But again, it is the challenge for the learning facilitators to guide their students, to coach their students, or even to motivate their students to find ways to continue learning outside of the learning venue, because the learning venue at this the traditional learning venue, because the modern learning venue happens everywhere, in the internet, inside the homes, inside the communities, and in the societies. But again, as I always say, it's a matter of really developing a deep sense of critical thinking and critical analysis among our students. uh, I started this forum when I said that I pity the young generations today. I appreciate their enthusiasm, their motivation, but the values that had been developed, no? Of course, not all of them. But one observation, like for example, one example which is very, very concrete, a young student walking in the streets, crossing the street, using his or her cell phone. Tapos pag binusinahan mo siya, galit pa sa iyo as if they are owners of the roads. See, that's a simple value of respect for traffic laws. But they become degree holders, they become professionals with that kind of value. And this is what I'm always saying. I miss the kind of curriculum we who are at this age, no, advanced age, have undertaken. Because at that time, even at the elementary level, the social studies, which emphasizes your participation in the communities and societies and abidance with the law, are very, very strong. Today, that's the one that we are facing, the challenge that we are facing. How many of us Filipinos have still respect for the laws? Without, of course, disregarding the fact that there are still people who are asking questions. Why? Who are making the laws? Are they abiding by it? But as I've said, as responsible citizens, we just have to make our own individual decisions on analyzing or decisions or applying our critical analysis of what will be the consequence of the actions that we are doing for our family, to ourselves, and to our society as a whole. So competent teachers are those who apply 21st century skills across content areas and for a competency-based approach to learning. I'll emphasize that later, and I hope we'll be able to reach that point, considering that I still have 1 hour and a half. Implement innovative learning methods that integrate the use of technologies, inquiry, and problem-based approach. Concentrate on student strength and personalized learning. Encourage, engage, and guide, and cooperate and share knowledge with colleagues. Encourage the integration of community resources beyond school walls. And this is very, very important when we reach the topic of teaching the science and technology subjects. Now, because at this point in time, I think our movement are still constrained by the IATF guidelines. For the GCQ areas, they cannot still move. For the MGCQ, we still need to get the permit of our local government units before we can move. Meaning that as we move in flexible learning modality, flexible meaning we use online plus face-to-face. The face-to-face component would be very, very difficult, and that is very, very challenging for the science and technology courses to be offered. But here you can already get some indication. Encourage the integration of community resources beyond school walls. Okay, so the key to successful educational change is to link two sets of strategies, teacher development and school development. But I pity because when we shifted into online learning, I saw in the news, most especially there, I was once the regional director of Region 11. I saw that some of the teachers, or many teachers in Compostela Valley, that's the Val de Oro, who are beside the streets looking for signals, no? Looking for signals so that they can learn the new modality. So I think this is one of the challenges today. Teacher development. If all our teachers experience the same thing, or majority of our teachers experience the same thing of having difficulty of using the technology, how will they be able to apply it in the learning process for their learners and school development? Okay. There, well, it does not only talk about infrastructure, of course. Like how many of our schools have internet access already, so that students do not have to bring their smart or their globe, what you call this, and pay for their own Wi-Fi, or teachers amidst the limitation of their salaries or savings because of their loans, have still to pay for the Wi-Fi that they are using in their classrooms. So at this time, doesn't really matter if the paints in your classrooms are already dilapidated. What is important that as we ship in the flexible learning is that there is Wi-Fi and there are enough resources uploaded in those facilities or those LMS. Okay. Okay, so is the effective educator in the 21st century? So based also on the ideas forwarded by authors and experts. So what attributes most define today's effective teacher? Let's go one by one. So there are many attributes that could be used. And one of the most important characteristics of the 21st century educator is the ability to engage students. In this regard, according to Selecti, the teachers need to be prepared to engage students, and of course proper preparation the learning facilitators, most especially this is important for the young students today or the young learners who are taking education today. It's a be prepared, and uh, at certain point in time we also have to understand that this is collaborative learning on the part of the learners and learning on the part of the learning facilitators. Get from their experiences so that you can expound on this later as you move on or as they move on in the phases of their own learning. So when students are engaged as full participants in their learning, they are able to respond to tasks that are involved within a different way than when they are ritually compliant. This leads to commitment to the work at hand and more investments in their success. And I hope even in simple cases like, for example, when our learners are too silent, too timid inside our classrooms, how do we motivate them to participate? And again, also important here is the team learning or the collaborative learning among students themselves. We always say that there are fast learners and there are slow learners. That's why the team approach to learning is very important, so that the fast learners could also contribute or guide or help the slow learners, and even the slow learners could understand to share their own experiences to all their classmates or their participants inside the learning venue. If learning is to be retained and made transferable, the tasks must have meaning to their learner. We will expound this later as we move on, because it's already taking into consideration the context of the learners' experiences, the families, the communities where they are in, and others. No? Schlechte noted that planning for student engagement can be time consuming, but he asserted in today's world there is a demand for men and women who think, reason, and use their minds well. And a common complaint is that schools are not producing enough citizens who can do so. At this point, I'd like to throw question to all the participants. This is a very, very beautiful question that I always ask myself every day, which I cannot find answers, but continues to trigger my mind to think. My question is this. This is epistemology. How do you know that you know and that you know? Okay, so this is a question that triggers practically our minds. Now, this is already a part of practically introducing us to the last topic that we'll be discussing today, which is the thinking curriculum. Okay. Okay. So the essential attributes. So what are the outstanding attributes? Okay, one. collaborator. The 21st century educator is an effective collaborator. When teachers have opportunities to engage in professional discourse, they can build upon their unique content, pedagogical, and experiential knowledge to improve instructions. This is among the teachers themselves. Okay, but before that, we have been doing this, no, because I do not know if there are still good faculty rooms where the teachers or the learning facilitators are sharing among themselves or collaboratively preparing their learning materials. There are some schools that have no faculty rooms. If ever they want to sit down, they sit down either in their canteen or outside under a mango tree. But the technology is also very, very helpful in facilitating this collaborative learning among our teachers. Teachers who work on teams are exposed to a breadth of knowledge and skills that can improve student outcomes. So a collaborative project-based approach ensures that students develop high-order thinking skills, effective communication skills, and knowledge of technology that students will need for 21st century careers and the global environment. Again, in the age of the pandemic, this is very, very challenging, but still very, very important. How do we create an environment for this collaborative project-based approach? Okay, so an effective educator to the 21st century is also a visionary. Effective educators need to be visionaries who can incorporate best practices to create highly engaged classrooms. They know how to make learning relevant and authentic. In science and technology and in TVET, this is also very, very important, most especially at this time when we shifted into flexible learning. You know, how we wish we can have an authentic learning environment, meaning that all our equipment and facilities reflects what are in the industries. Because of the difficulty of moving around, because of the limitations of the IITF guidelines during this pandemic, the face-to-face or OJTs, apprenticeship, DTS are very, very important. But they're very, very difficult. But they are very, very important in developing skills, of course, that are needed by the industries for employment later on if our graduates are aiming for employment. And that's why it's a desire that we will have a very, very uh, effective or modernized equipment. And but there are also learning management systems that have simulations. I've seen one, but that comprises the whole of manufacturing. So the learners can just sit down wherever he wants inside the campus, open their iPad or their computers, their cell phones, access to the labor market system, no, the learning management system, and they can do simulations in there. They can even undertake assessment there. And if they are confident already to undergo assessment, they can go to a company or to an assessment center to be assessed. And then later on, maybe when the environment normalizes, can go into the practicum inside the company or inside the laboratories. But those learning management systems are not cheap. But again, of course, uh, education is not cheap. Learning is not cheap. We just have to invest, of course, and create this environment for authentic learning. Okay, so another one is that the educator or the learning facilitators must be culturally proficient. So in addition, the effective educator is culturally proficient, sensitive to equity and access issues within the classroom, the school site, and the district, as well as being an advocate for equity and access in state or federal policies in case of the other countries. And this is the one that I emphasized a while ago, that we cannot depart. That's why I always say the curriculum is always wider or broader than the industry requirements, because because the focus is always employability of graduates. But how about being a productive and responsible members of the society? Well, some people would forward the criticism, but you are going back to a humanistic philosophy in education. But I said, why? Who are we guiding or coaching in the learning process? We are not we are not guiding animals. We are still guiding humans. And some of these people or some of these humans are not really inclined to go into work inside the company. They might just even put their own or establish their own businesses or small enterprises to manage their own lives. But that does not mean that they are not part of the society. They are not part of their communities, and that's why I long the practices of before, no, which I really regret that's not happening anymore. But I do not know because of the drive in the reforms in basic education at this time, where teachers are visiting homes again or conferring with teachers. But I still remember when I was in basic education, when teachers on Saturdays, maybe at that time because the demand of the economic demand is not yet high for teachers, they go around every weekend and just to ask parents how are their students, how are they, or projects that the teachers are asking their students to perform inside the communities, to become responsible members of the communities. And this is one of the challenges that we are facing as we move towards development. How I long for that time to go back, but it will remain to be a longing, of course, because there are changes already in the environment. But again, how do we create an environment to create this responsible, participative, active, and productive members of our society? And not only within their communities, not only within their own society, but there is a phenomenon of what you call global citizenship at this point in time. To live together, most especially in Mindanao, because how do we emphasize education for peace in Mindanao? These are the things that, and of course, the understanding of culture and practices of each faith is very, very important, most especially in Mindanao. Okay, teachers are perhaps the single most influential person in improving student learning. Yeah, this is still true. No? Because at certain point, sometimes when I even when I even myself experience this, the learners are more inclined to follow what their teachers are saying than their parents. No? Hindi hindi naman yan sinabi ni sir eh. Hindi naman yan sinabi ni ma'am eh. So I said the influence of teachers or of learning facilitators are still very, very important. This is also important when it comes to values. The practice of values, the demonstration of values, the sharing of values to our students. No? What are the good practices and values that our learners can emulate? Learning does not only happen by teaching. Learning also happen by observing. And a lot of the young generation today observing what are the practices of their teachers. Not only listen to whatever rumors are there, but observing what their learning facilitators, which they always consider to be their hero or their model, are doing, are practicing, are demonstrating, so that they can emulate them. Okay, let's shift to teaching in the fourth industrial revolution. I'll go fast because I only have 1 hour. So anticipating what lies around the turn in the road has always been a critical matter in any environment. So the same is true in education. Looking to the future, anticipating issues, and suggesting approaches that will bring the next generation to the level of dealing with the critical and complex societal and political issues to be faced is the challenge. Okay, and I always say this. The problem with the future is it's not yet here. That's why it's not easy to anticipate things. It's not easy to proact. We always have to base in the past and the present, the trend. But there's one philosopher who said, uh, if you want to see the future, you cannot reach the future by regurgitating the past. He said, And even Hegel, a philosopher, would always say that we are what we are not, and we are not what we are. Meaning that we have not reached the full meaning of it. We are not yet what we are supposed to be. It's evolving. And that's why continuous or lifelong learning is very, very important to discover even ourselves, to discover who we are, the meaning of our existence in the society, meaning of the relationships that we engage in, the meaning of our practice of our professions, the meaning of our participation in the society. These are all evolving, and there are a lot of challenges that we are facing. I always say to myself that the worst enemy of a person is himself. And that's why a lot of people do not just want to discover who they are, because they don't want to face the reality of who they will be and what is the demand of being that kind of person in the society. So education is not only the vanguard, it is the solution. It's very, very important. So it's not only developing the skills. It's not only the developing the minds. For me, as I've said, while some people would critique that I'm going back to the humanistic philosophy of education, I say education is still the development of the whole being of the person, not only the arms, not only the legs, not only the brain, but the whole totality of the individual, and what will be his or her participation to other individuals. If you go back into your subjects in educational ethics, you will still remember what Immanuel Kant said. Uh, for him, it's very, very simple to talk about ethics. You just say, you are familiar with the golden rule. It just says that uh, if you act, when you act, always consider that your action becomes a norm, an universal law. Meaning, like, for example, if you steal, you ask yourself, do you want everybody to steal? If you kill, do you want everybody to be killers, murderers? If you don't, then don't act. Don't do it. So always remember that before you act, you always consider that your action will become a universal law or universal norm. So education is the foundation for everything. We need a democratic, professional, self-confident, well-supported, and versatile teaching profession that has professional autonomy and professional capital. But not the capital from loans, because I know that there are a lot of teachers who cannot cope up with their salaries anymore because of loans. I'm not saying that's bad, but we have also to manage our own finances in order not to be trapped by certain conditions. So education is still the foundation of everything. There is an issue now facing this, in I think it's in the social media about UP and anything like about the students. No? Teaching profession that has professional autonomy and professional capital. Okay, so must reform our curricula to teach a newer range of material as technology disrupt nearly every field. Again, challenge to those who are still practicing the profession and those who are preparing themselves to become learning facilitators. Equip yourselves in the technology. That's that's the one that makes me sad. As I increase in age, I can't cope up anymore with learning the new technologies. I only use PowerPoint materials, even insertion of all these pictures in my presentation materials, self-study. Maybe in the next time that I have the opportunity to share what I know to others, I'll just post pictures here and just discuss with no text, so that people just be creative to think what it is. Students must be adept not only at understanding technological change and using technology. Remember, technology is the tool, not our master. Okay? There are even questions, can teachers be replaced by robots? Well, if you can put the brains of the teachers in the robot, then maybe. Okay, you still need people to operate or to manufacture robots. But also in developing profoundly human skills such as leadership, social and emotional intelligence, and critical thinking. which are attributes of human beings that cannot be transferred to machines. If competition has defined the education of the past, collaboration, empathy, and teamwork will define the education of the future. I do not have to explain this anymore. I've explained this a while ago. So moreover, we need to impart students with a new flexible and adaptable mindset about learning, one that emphasizes the need for continued and lifelong learning. Practically, this is one of the issues that we are confronting in a lot of discussions that I attended. In order to be a professional, do you need to have that long 4 years and 5 years? Do you need all those subjects that are being taught to become an expert in what you want? Those are challenges. To embrace such a mindset, students must learn to be curious about their changing environment and develop the resilience necessary to not just manage but to thrive on change. And as I've said, there are a lot of things that you can practically download in the internet. You can just open it at any point in time. Ako, I wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning. The first thing that I do is open after taking a bath, the first thing that I do is open my internet. And I'll just share my own journey to learning. Every time I read the newspaper, a book, and I can no longer remember the meaning of a word. You know, I'll just go to my dictionary in my phone and again review the definition. Then I'll go into my downloader, type the same word. If I'm lucky, I still hit there are new publications as regards those things. Recently, I attended the training on online training on HR analytics. It's a 3 day of half-day sessions using software in analyzing the role of HR in the company's bottom line. It's very short. I'm not that good at practicing it immediately, but in order to enhance my learning, I went to my downloader, I typed the HR analytics, I downloaded the video lessons. Now I can review what I missed in the discussion in that half day, 3 day sessions on HR analytics. Because of course that's where my doctorate is also founded, my OD. So that's how I expand my own learning. Sometimes if there are no video, it's audio. And audio, it's nice. I even have still my audio on the giants of philosophy. That's where I review my AB philosophy, from Plato to Sartre. And every day of my life, every time I travel, I don't listen to music. I listen to my giants in philosophy or my audio lessons. The future of education content is thus neither wholly digital nor wholly human, but a hybrid of both. This applies to teaching as well. Okay. Still need the learning facilitator, still need venues. I doubt that there will come a time that there will be no more teachers. It will never come. But the challenge, of course, there is that the learning facilitators, most especially those who are still on process of reaching of achieving that profession, really prepares themselves. And as I've said, your 4 year or 5 year curriculum will not be enough to absorb the modern or the new things that are happening now. Because as I've said, what you know today might no longer be valid tomorrow. So you just have to augment, to complement whatever are given you by your own learning facilitators or by the new resources. Even the books required. Before, you can just go back to your own library. Now, if the literature is 5 years, no longer acceptable in the libraries of the institutions of higher learnings. Embracing technology as an instrument or empowerment in the classroom can enhance teaching. So you heard about this already, the technology-aided learning. Innovations in technology today make it possible to synthesize and analyze data, to tailor pedagogy to the individual student needs, and provide feedback in real time. So when we talk about teaching in the fourth industrial revolution, we are not just teaching about the new machineries in the manufacturing companies what is still highlighted in the fourth industrial revolution are the 21st century skills. That's why our learning materials now are really talking about the different 21st century skills. And one of those very, very important, even in entrepreneurship, very, very important 21st century skills is thinking. So here you can already see how the learning outcomes are formulated. Synthesize and analyze data. This is as I was introduced, that's highly emphasized when we were preparing the PQF level 5. Soon we will have the PQF level 4 and 3. We have finished already the outline of that. It's just a matter of preparing a curriculum for technicians, because our PQF level 5 is for technologists, which is anchored on Sydney Accord, and for technicians, which is anchored on Dublin Accord. That will be another PQF level 4 and then PQF level 3. So soon we will be piloting this again. But you can still remember when we were sitting down in preparing the diploma program, when I highlighted that the learning outcomes of the PQF level 5 must already be at the level of analysis, because that is already higher thinking skills. Because of course it crosses already the boundaries of the PQF level 6, because PQF level 6 is already on creating in the taxonomy, in Bloom's taxonomy of learning objectives or learning outcomes. It already crosses, but what level of function that will be done by the individual, that's where to be dictated by the level of thinking that is to be developed. It's no longer perform, demonstrate, define. No, that's a lower level. When you reach the PQF level 4, 3, 4, 5, 6, the emphasis must already be on the thinking skills. But the companies would always say, we will not wait for our workers to be at that level of PQF 5 before they can think critically. Level 1, they must already have that one. So when we use the rubric on integrating the 21st century skills, we have to be clear on what levels. At level 1, what will be the critical thinking, or the level of thinking critically that must be developed in individual. Okay, so allow students from drastically different parts of the world to collaborate on projects. And this is very, very challenging and now there is an opportunity for this because we are online. The use of ICT in education or technology aided teaching and learning has already opened the world. And even here, as I've said, I have a diploma on agri-business technology in Negros. And next year, I say open it already to the whole of the region. And we will be, because it's online, it can be open to the whole country practically for learners or young learners. And I was surprised. The enrollment was high, no? And majority of them are women in agri-business technology, online, no? Purely online. And they are using virtual farms already. It's there. It's in the literature anyway. It's practiced all throughout the world already. And create platforms for sharing best practices across the world. So teachers must thus work in tandem with technology to provide holistic education that prepares students for the future. So only a strategic integration of personal coaching and digital learning can provide both the technological and human-centered skills necessary to thrive in the fourth industrial revolution. So the picture here illustrates that. Okay, so every student brings their whole being into the classroom, and that the world, whether it be local or global, always influences and changes how they feel, act, and think. And each individual student is a new, independent, and constantly changing variable in an ever-changing context. Again, the picture there illustrates where our learners are coming from. Uh, we can no longer follow the philosophy of tabula rasa, that the individual is like an empty white sheet of paper and experience right in it. Here you can say that when the individual comes into our learning venues or our institutions, learning institutions, they already have their own experiences. They already have their own values, no matter how good or bad it is. coming from their family or what they have observed in their families, observed in the communities. They have their own interpretation of things and the kind of a family they have. That's the worldview that they have created based on this environment. So how does these things? Because even if we go back to the philosophy of progressivism, which was promoted by John Dewey, which is the foundational philosophy of constructivism, which we are now applying both in the basic education in Tibet and in higher education. John Dewey always says, or the philosophy of progressivism always say, education is not a preparation for life. Education is life itself. And how we enhance the good experiences of the learning of the learner when they reach our learning venues or learning institutions, or what is the process of change that the individual is experiencing in the learning venue to open their perspectives and change their own interpretations of a certain experience, develop a value that was different from what they have observed or what they have seen, or open their perspective in interpreting things in their life. And this will continue to influence us or challenge us as learning facilitators. So this nuance often gets lost when education is discussed, especially at the global policy level. This one, a very, very important thing. Uh, and we have already shifted for I think for how many years have we shifted to a learner-focused education? Even before the reforms in basic education, we have been emphasizing learner-focused. But this is easier to say than done, most especially because it's also difficult to have an individually or a learner focused stereotyped learning process for every individual inside the classroom, considering that our classrooms, most especially in basic education, our classrooms are too tight that you cannot even use games as a methodology of teaching because there are so many learners inside the classroom. That's why in our case, we limit our learners to 25 with the ratio of 1 is to 5 for our technology. The ideal, of course, is 1 is to 1. But if you pursue that 1 is to 1 technology for one learner, you will also limit the possibility of collaborative learning among your learners. That's why we still stand by 1 is to 5 so that they can talk. I experienced one, I witnessed one in one training center. I can't remember where it is, but when I was in Mindanao. And instead of in Corfil in Davao, uh, they're working on automotive. There are three of them, but they are not asking each other. They are not doing research. They are just doing things one at a time. They are not even asking themselves what the problem is, and how will they solve it. Okay, so, and still the ratio is 1 is to 5, and yet it's not present. So how much more if it is 1 is to 1? So you cannot promote team learning or collaborative learning in that. So teachers exemplify three Aristotelian virtues. So these are episteme, techne, and pronesis. Episteme is the knowledge of universal truth, that's science. Techne is the ability to make things, that's technology. But what Aristotle regarded as the highest intellectual virtue and what captures the teaching profession best was what he called pronesis, practical wisdom. Okay. So we need wisdom to make judgments about what is desirable or good again and again. To say it in more popular terms, we need more practical knowledge in education. And this is very, very important in teaching subjects or technology subjects in education, most especially at this time of the pandemic. But I will go into that later. Okay. So in the end, it comes down to people, culture, and values. He identifies 4 different types of intelligences. You are familiar with this: contextual or mind intelligence. I'll share this materials with you anyway. I'll not go deeper into this so that we can shift into the science and technology. Emotional intelligence. You have been hearing about these things for some time already. Self-awareness, self-regulation, motivation, empathy, and social skills. And these are 21st century skills again. Inspired intelligence, how we use a sense of individual and shared purpose, okay, for the common good. Then physical intelligence, okay. So the question that I threw a while ago, will that robot become their teacher? Not likely. It has been said widely enough that many jobs are en route to extinction at the fourth industrial revolution, and it may very well be so. And even in our classes with the ALO, it's always say that there is number of jobs that will be gone, but there are million of jobs that will be created in the fourth industrial revolution. But the jobs that are most likely to disappear are the ones that can be automated. You cannot automate the teacher, of course. If our work as teachers was to put kids together at a huge assembly line called the school factory, then maybe yes, we should be worried. Okay. But kids are not furniture, cars, toys, or any piece of merchandise. For that matter, that can be mass produced to a standard. And a teacher's job is not the repetitive task many believe it to be, as we were just filling little brains one after the other. That's why the first question that I ask the teachers every time I'm asked to speak in a forum is that how many times do you review and amend your syllabi in a semester, like for example? And this is the same question that I will throw to you. How often? Have you experienced that when you enter the classroom, you cannot even use the syllabus or the learning materials that you have prepared because your students are ahead of you, because they've been akin to my challenge of managing their learning? Or have you also experienced that you cannot use their learning materials because your learners are way behind? What will you do? You walk out of the classroom, and that is a question already of the preparedness of the teachers, no? Of the learning facilitators. How will you guide these students over and above or beyond the learning materials that you have prepared to use that span of time that you are allowed for them to discuss, for them to learn new things, for them to interpret, for them to think? So first grade teachers put in reading and writing, second grade teachers cement, addition, and subtraction, third grade teachers put in the times tables, and so on. Education is a tailor-made suit. It must fit each child precisely and adjust while she is growing. It is not perfect. In fact, it is usually unpredictable, messy, and complex. But it is also beautiful and profoundly uplifting. So every teacher that is true to his calling is an artist. Every child a collective masterpiece, one in which the creation is also a creator. Okay? Okay, so can we have a 5-minute break? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
sir. Yes, sir. Thank you,
Five
sir.
minute? Okay. Tuyo na nga lalamunan.
Okay, sir. Okay, okay. Take your time, sir.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
Reminders for those who are viewing on our YouTube live, could put your questions on the comment section below after the talk of Dr. Gayona. And the evaluation link will be put on our comment section after the talk. Thank you.
Nakamute ka, sir. Excuse, sir, nakamute ka imong mic. Sir, excuse, nakamute imong mic. May istorya na siya. Oh, pa siya ng istorya.
Okay, sorry. Now where is my presentation? Present now. Okay. Okay. Dinig na? Okay, so effective teaching is at the heart of science education. So good teachers of science create environments in which they and their students work together as active learners. And our picture there illustrates the use of technology. But the challenge at this time, because we are talking about the pandemic and we are using the flexible learning, is how to make use of how are we able to apply how are the students be able to apply how will the students be able to apply the theories considering the fact that our on-the-job training is still limited. And this is where our creativity would come in. What projects shall we assign the students so that they can use in their even at home or in their community, the one that we have indicated earlier, the use of community resources in applying the knowledge that they gain, because technology is more of practice, applying the theories or even generating new theories out of doing something or learning by doing. And of course, we do not our learners are not that equipped with resources that they can just buy any technology that we want. Like if we are teaching CAD, like for example, it's an online, it can be learned through online, but you need to practice that. So you have to install that in the computers of your learners so that they can practice, and just through video streaming, the professors or the experts can evaluate it. But not everything in technology education can be put in the computers or in a software. And that's why, as I've said, if if we have to invest if we have to invest in the learning management system, we have to invest in LMS that have simulations, so that as we prepare for the normalization of the environment where they can go already, or even the institutions, the learning institutions have to equip their laboratories as for the meantime a kind of a complementary environment or learning venue, while our students cannot go still to industries to demonstrate their knowledge or make use of the new technologies in the companies. This is challenging even for us in TESDA or in Tibet. A lot of our learners are really used to tinkering with equipment, and that's what I've observed personally. Even our regional training center, the learners or the number of learners that are coming in our gates for enrollment are very few. Even though the targets for the scholarships is almost done, there are still institutions that cannot fill their classrooms or their learning institutions, even if there is a use of a blended or flexible learning. And because of the limitations of the IATF guidelines, and of course the availability of our internet connections is also challenging at this point in time. So for those institutions where students can still go because they're allowed, uh, uh, you cannot go back to the past that they still have to converge together in a classroom. Even the learning institutions have to equip themselves with internet connections. Considering the fact that many of our students also are in far-flung areas and there is no available internet yet, even if they have modern cell phones, if there are no connectivity, they cannot use it. But if the environment or if the learning institutions are already allowed by the local government units, in order to maximize the use of technology, they have to equip themselves in internet connection so that the learners do not have to converge in one area. Considering that we are observing still a social distancing, equip the learning institutions with the internet connectivity so that wherever the learners can situate themselves or can position themselves inside the campus, they will still be able to maximize the use of technology in their learning rather than wait for the time that the local government units allow classrooms to be filled up. It might come early, it might come late, we do not really know. They're saying vaccines are here, but vaccines versus vaccination are two different things. There might be available vaccines, but still affordability of that for the ordinary citizens may not be there, because there will still be prioritization and of course the capability of the country to buy all these things or to manufacture their own laboratories here in the country. So this is one of the challenges, but this really have to go into how the learners and the learning facilitators have to work together to become active learners by themselves, sharing their own experiences. So learning science is an active process. It does not end as that we know. If the foundation of knowledge is there, we are always talking about flexibility. We are talking about agility of the workers or agility of the individuals. I always believe that in order for the individual to be flexible, it's not only on the number of skills. People will just say they are flexible because they have different NCs. But where is the knowledge base of that? Because for me, the knowledge foundation in science and technology expands the horizons of the individuals to adapt themselves to the new technologies. Because you know the formulas, you know the principles behind. But for a person who has on the skill without the foundation of science and technology or the knowledge, how can they apply a certain theory that is not there? We always say you cannot give what you do not have. You might have the skill. Like for example, in our industry engagements here in Region 6, like for example, even in construction, our partner industries here, the ones that we engage in, they say, sir, you have to shift your machinery into prefabs. Into prefabs. You know, we do not have that program yet here in our regional training centers. But most especially because even our machinery is still a skill and not really founded on knowledge, on the knowledge base. And this is where I'm very strong. If we want our people to be flexible, agile, give them the foundation of knowledge. Even in our conference in Indonesia, facilitated by ADB, all the country representatives in that in that forum
all emphasized the significance of STEM. But there's one participant who said, but many of our young people hate STEM. And this is very, very critical because even in our case in Tibet, like for example, we are trying to integrate STEM already. But I said, but STEM has to be founded at the basic education level. Rather than wait for time for them to be a Tibet to go to STEM and then to higher education. It has to be, and it has to be founded first at the basic education. And I'm saying, and this is where the PQF is very, very important, the seamless transition of education. That one contributes to the other. It's not a linear system. It's still a cyclical system because of course learning also is in that regard. We have to reiterate. We have to, in order to really understand the foundational knowledge. So in learning science, students describe objects and events, ask questions, acquire knowledge, construct explanations of natural phenomena, test those explanations in many different things, and communicate their ideas to others, and even apply it to something that will make themselves more productive. Okay, and this is the foundation. This is how shall we provide an environment for our learners in the application of flexible learning during the pandemic, in really developing this kind of attributes in our learners. They ask questions, they acquire knowledge, they explain it, and then they apply it. So science teaching must involve students in inquiry-oriented investigation in which they interact with their teachers and peers. Again, collaborative learning, students establish connections between their current knowledge of science and the scientific knowledge found in many sources. And then they apply science content to new questions. They engage in problem solving, planning, decision making, and group discussions. And now you can see the significance or the importance of STEM, even in Tibet, in all technology courses at the level of Tibet and at the level of higher educations. Still, if you have that, it will be easier for us to develop the 21st century skills. Because for me, science and technology are really inquiry-based. You ask questions. Why? And I think the shift from teaching to learning is already very, very clear in that. The trend of education is no longer on the what, but on the how. And the how and the why are very, very important because that really triggers the ability of the person to think critically, first analytically, then critically, then enter into systems thinking. And this is what it is implying, that you can relate that knowledge itself from many different sources to many different approaches as well and many different applications. And they experience assessments that are consistent in an active approach to learning. Okay, I'll go fast on this. I'll give you the materials anyway. These are all self-explanatory. I'll go into the different modalities of teaching science and technology. Okay, so school science reflects the intellectual and cultural traditions that characterize the practice of contemporary science. The picture is there. And then, okay, so the science of today is the technology of tomorrow. And my question is that even in the fast changes in technology, are they not founded on the knowledge that they had in the past? Even the logarithms in ICT, like for example, are they not coming from the foundation of mathematics or any branches or any forms, any branches of mathematics, like for example? They are founded on the science and technology. And this is very, very important. That's why I said, if we want to make a worker flexible, to shift from one technology to the other, it has to be founded in science and technology. I will not let go of that principle as the regional director in Tibet. And that's why, as I've said, even the PQF level 5, the line that divides the PQF level 5 to PQF level 6 is very, very thin in the use of knowledge or in applying the knowledge that the individual as learned. But again, I still emphasize that if we want really a strong, a more flexible, agile individual or worker, STEM has to be very, very strong at the basic education level, even in the senior high school. So that learning could also be facilitated well. It will not be block by block, but it will be a continuous process. Like for example, if we wait for the individual to finish basic education and learn STEM in Tibet, that will take Tibet also very, very long. While the technology is there already and they can easily apply it in the context of technical education, if if uh, if STEM, the foundation is will still wait for that individual to reach that level of the of learning, because before they strive to found the STEM, it will take time before they can have it, and the technology has already changed. This is what I mean by the seamless transition of education. It's only a matter really of integrating our education system so that there will be no more boundary that divide one level of education to the other. Some people would often say, let's go back to the traditional text and let's combine them together. Will it be helpful? Or shall we just strengthen what is existing now by reviewing the relationship from the different levels of education? Because as I've said, here it's very clear. The science of today is the technology of tomorrow. And still the same question that I'm asking. Are there new discoveries, new inventions today coming from the new knowledge, or are they founded on the very, very basic foundation of science and technology, mathematics, and others? Okay. So technology and science are closely related. Single problem often has both scientific and technological aspects. And then the need to answer questions in natural world drives the development of technological products. Moreover, technological needs can drive scientific research. And then technological products, from pencils to computers, provide tools that promote understanding of natural phenomena. I'll go into the different ways of teaching science and technology. I'll go fast on this so that I can go into the issue of mismatch. It's 11:10 already. So effective teachers of science create an environment in which they and students work together as active learners. I have discussed that already earlier. Okay, so these are the different forms of teaching and learning in science and technology. First, ensure students' personal needs are addressed. Do more with less. Merge science and technology education. Aim to educate all students to the best of their abilities. Address a breadth of learning domains. Base teaching on constructivist learning theories. Provide concrete experiences prior to presenting abstract knowledge, abstract ideas. Provide students in personally relevant education. Vary teaching and learning strategies. Have faith in students. Vary control of learning. Use deductive inquiries to support claims. Realistically portray NOST and STs and then provide skills apprenticeships, enable students to conduct. Here, in terms of the apprenticeships, as I've said, it's quite difficult at this time during the pandemic. It's really providing, encouraging students to use indigenous materials first to apply their knowledge. It's of course might not be enough, but as I've said, we just have to contend with the time. But we cannot stop. We just have to provide, most especially for the learning facilitators, for the teachers, to really look for ways and means that the learners will be able to apply whatever they have learned slowly, even in the premises of their homes. If we have good laboratories, then we can really schedule that. I think LCID will be able to share with you our own process of flexible learning. So the most important thing is that they really have to apply rather than just study and study and study the theories. Because as I've said, it will be easier and faster for the individual to learn when they are practicing. Even in simple facilitation, for example, what I'm doing here with my own people, I do not have the time to train them as facilitators. I just make them observe and then do apply what they have observed, and we have 20 days and 20 engagements, and they are learning. So learning by doing. This is very important so that there will be no lull time while we are waiting for the change. We cannot do away with it. We cannot do otherwise anyway. So let's just be creative to motivate our learners to really practice. Or because there are some who would say that let's just teach the general education subjects first. But there are occasions where learners need to stop because they have to earn. Like for example, when we developed the PQF level 5, the main principle that we applied is this. Nobody, no one will be dropped out. So every semester of that 3 years, because we do not have the PQF level 3 and 4 yet, but once we have finished that, we will know how long will the diploma will be. Because of course, that will be feeding its level, and you just formulate a credit transfer system within the TWIT system so that you do not have to repeat courses that have already been undertaken. So in that 3 years of the diploma, at every semester, there must be at least, in the original diploma, there must be at least 3 national certificate for every courses that have the laboratory. And that is why we use the courses in college, even the standards, to be the basis. But for those courses that are the laboratory, it must be assessed so that they can have the national certificate. And for those poor who would like to stop for a while because they want to earn, they can stop at any semester. They are not dropouts because the condition was that the institution must orient the supervisors of the company that these are the learning outcomes for the next semester, and uh, and provide an opportunity for the supervisors in the company also to hone the skills and the knowledge of the individuals within the company, so that if they want to go back, they just have to be assessed, and once they are able to demonstrate the learning outcomes of the second semester, they can just be given their units without entering the school. Of course, they have to pay because nobody will give them the units. No? So that's a seamless process of learning. They do not have to go back to school. They can just continue their work. They can earn. No? But some people would say, but that's very ideal. But I said, where does the reality come from? It is not coming from any idea. An ideal might it be now, but if we implement it now, it's no longer ideal. It's already a reality. And these are the things that we have to confront during this pandemic, on how to maximize things. So as Socrates said, the unexamined life is not worth living. In other words, it always is important to review and evaluate one's actions. Accordingly, teachers need to assess, collect information about their instructional practices, and student learning, and evaluate or judge them. So to know is to know that you know nothing. That is the meaning of true knowledge. And I would like also to reiterate what Socrates said when he was praised that he was the most knowledgeable person in Athens at that time. And he said, I can't believe that. But of course, it was the sage that they asked. He said, so he experimented and interviewed people. And yeah, it was proven that he really is the knowledgeable person. Not because he knows more, but he said, I believe that I am more knowledgeable than this person because I know that I do not know, and this person doesn't know that he doesn't know. And that's the start of wisdom. As long as you open your perspective, no, and say that, well, accept the fact that you do not know, but it does not stop there. As Socrates also said, emphasizing his philosophy of education about teacherless education. So for those learners that are in the audience, the challenge, of course, is to continue with your own learning. Learning is not enclosed or bound in the four corners of of the infrastructure you call the school. Because for me, wherever learning happens, that's the school. It could be in your home, it could be in your community. Okay, so here are some of the methodologies or modalities. So hands-on learning, storytelling, role play, sports-based learning, visual clues, instructional conversations, science text cards, and others. You will have this material anyway, so I do not have to go through this because I want to go into the drivers of change. This is very short. I will not go into the thinking curriculum anymore, but I will give you the materials and please study them because this is very, very important. As I've said, as we face the challenges of the time, as we move towards the future that we do not know yet, we have to really maximize the opportunity of developing perspectives of our learners through the thinking curriculum. But I would like to show this to you before in 10 minutes to show to you the challenges or the skills implication of all this. I will not describe this one by one, but I will show you the skills implication of all these things. I borrowed this from my own training. I'm still undergoing training. I've just finished the sectoral focus. I'm now attending the online training on skills anticipation and mismatch. I'm supposed to be doing that simultaneous with the labor market intelligence, but the materials are so heavy. So I just asked my staff to please attend that, get all the video lessons and all the materials, and give me a copy so that I could do those after I finish my own training here. Okay, so as I've said, just have to grab the opportunity for continuous learning. You can read the text, you can read the books, you can read the materials, you can download that into internet. But I also prefer that if there are opportunities for me to go to training, I will go to training even if I know things already, because you do not know whether what you know through reading are the true things based on the explanations of the experts who are practicing it anyway. So these are the drivers of change that we have confronted in the past few years. So we have globalization, we have work organization. Of course, that a lot of companies are becoming flat, and also the changes in the work processes and technologies. Climate change that are giving an opportunity for us to go into green jobs. Demographic change, of course, we are filled of young generation. Some countries are aging. The other countries have more than enough young generation who are not in employment. Technology and innovation, migration. Some countries have their professionals working outside of their countries because many of the learned population are looking for greener pasture outside of their own country. Of course, the most recent and the present is the COVID-19. So what are the skills implication of all these drivers of change? I'll go this fast. One, so we're going to specialize technical skills, so a wide variety of competencies. So it's not just digital, and it's not limited to a single national certificate in our language here. So wide variety of competencies. That's why I shared a while ago that even in construction, they are already talking about, sir, we have to multi-skill our workers because the difficulty of hiring, of bringing back the workers that have gone home during this pandemic is very, very, already happening. We cannot just recall them while some are staying in the company, so it's better for them because they have the workers. But for those workers that went home, they cannot go back. They said, let's multi-skill our workers. That's only a simple experience, but there are also a lot of OFWs coming home after finishing their contract and still going back to skills development because there are still opportunities. And after they have finished their second NC, the opportunity is already gone. And I said, why don't we just multi-skill them so that they can stay long in their work and shift from one work to the other? Now, care skills, of course. Here, we are not just talking about STEM. We are talking about STEAM. And I think I heard one secretary who said that, why are we not focusing on art also? Yeah, if we are developing innovativeness in the individual, this is where we realize that art is very, very instrumental in developing innovativeness. So science, technology, engineering, art, mathematics. So innovative with social responsibility. Skills to operate and maintain technologies, that's TVET. Design and systems thinking. Okay, so you heard this already. Design thinking is already practiced. Systems thinking has been here for some time already, but a lot of people do not practice this. No? System thinking simply means you look at the whole. It's like the saying that you see the forest for the trees. So understand the forest ecology first, and then you will know what species of tree to plant. In the organization, you have to understand the whole ecology of the organization before you can introduce what kind of an organizational design, what skills do you need, what technology do you need, what kind of people do you need, what values. Those are the things. So transferable technical skills, because there are skills that are already becoming obsolete. Another one, in terms of foundational skills there, literacy, numeracy, digital literacy, and digital detox literacy. At this point in time, it has to be basic already, not only common, but basic already. It's foundational skills already. Research literacy, important for self-directed learning. Okay, so as I've said, let's create an environment for our learners to really motivate them to do their own, to manage their own learning through research. Environmental literacy, which is prevailing even in SDG for sustainable development. Okay, for core work and transferable skills, so we have learning to learn, so that's our continuous lifelong learning, agility and resilience, stress resistance, persistence, foresees, communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking, future thinking, including our own future, adaptability, flexibility skills, curiosity, and mindsets that support openness, change, and innovation. For the fourth one, which is entrepreneurial and artisanal skills, nurture job creators, not only job takers. So that's why at this time of the pandemic, where jobs are not yet available, and there have been a lot of displacement. The challenge for us in Tibet, like for example, is how to support the emerging MSMEs, and even the ones that are still existing. How do we nurture that? So deploying technology will depend on entrepreneurial and leadership talent. And as I said, entrepreneurial skills will still require critical thinking, most especially when you do market research, analysis of the strategic options, decision making. Increasing demand for artisanal customized products, alternative to competing like in health, fashion, and beauty, customized solutions for industries, repair services, new techs to upgrade, augment, and reduce price, and digital entrepreneurship. And in the 20 industries that we have been engaging here, this had already appeared, or they have pronounced this for several times. They want to know about online marketing and others. So for digital skills, so here, so examples for the basic and generic digital skills, so basic digital literacy, software user skills such as spreadsheets. So the examples are here. I will not read them one by one. Okay. So here, the demand for skills is changing faster than training is delivered. Okay, and this is the span of years that all these skills will be developed. So we cannot just consider Tibet to be that modular short-term program. In this regard, we have even consider the lifelong learning modality, because the change in demand might occur at the middle of the framework, so that even the learning for the Tibet graduates have to pass through a certain period of time before they can develop the whole cycle of the competencies that are needed by the industries. And at the end, here, this is one of the causes of the mismatches. So we have overeducated but underskilled, and this is the challenge for our engineering programs in institutions of higher learning. Because there in Mindanao, there was one company, for example, or two big construction companies there that have already mounted that. Yeah, sir. I mean, we hired them, the new board passer, civil engineers. We hired them, we give them good salary to retain them. Unfortunately, they do not have the skills. And that is why now you know the reason why we have to look into the PQF levels in and how to integrate all these things. You look into the model of the PQF level 5. All along the way, they have using the curriculum in engineering, in civil engineering, like for example, taking the first 3 years of that, integrating the national certificate of TVET. They can stop at any point in time. They can even stop without finishing it. What do you need a board for? Abroad, the salary of a technologist is higher than an engineer. The salary of a technician is higher than an engineer. So why do you have to finish it? But if you finish 2 years, like for example, I dropped out in college, going back to TESDA to get the skills. I said, what a lost opportunity. Because if you already integrated in your technology courses in higher learning, the necessary the competency standards are there. It's developed by the industry. If you use the same competency standards and integrate them in whatever curriculum we have at any level of education system that we have, it will be advantageous for our learners because they can. If they say my brain is tired because my pocket is empty, and they can just stop for the meantime and go to work and earn. They do not have to go back to us to test that to get an NC because along the way from first year to fifth year of their engineering, if it is still 5 years, they already accumulated 17 to 20 national certificates. And they can stop at any unvaried, various certificate, not only in automotive, but also in others in mechanical engineering. They even have electricity and others. So we have also undereducated but overskilled. And that's why I mentioned a while ago that in TVET, like for example, the critique of the competency based in the international literature always points that in the competency based, that the knowledge input, but the outcome based is more of input, knowledge input without skills. As I said, just combine them together, combine the technical education and the higher and the programs of the institution of higher learning, and you will have the best graduates that you can have. We have also over undereducated or over and under skilled. There are a lot of professionals, like for example, an engineer working as a barber, like for example. Okay, so that's also one of the causes of the mismatch. So with that, it's 11:30 on time. Okay, so these are the challenges for skills anticipation and mismatch. So this is the skills demand and skills supply. Why did I include that? Because you are talking about science and technology or technology courses. And where will it go? Because when you talk about science, which is your foundational knowledge, and technology, which is the application of your scientific of your foundation, of your knowledge foundation, it always have to consider the fact that you are developing not only the brain, but you're also developing the hand. And of course, the most important thing is that you develop the heart as well, so that you will have values which are emphasized by the industries. That we have a very, very good worker, but we need to realign the values, relationships, awareness of the organization, all of these things that are soft skills to be considered, that are essential for a very, very effective and productive individual in the society or in the companies. So I will leave the thinking curriculum. It's quite long, but I will give this material to you for you to study. If you need some more materials, don't hesitate to email me. If I have them, I'll email it to you. Unfortunately, I cannot email the video lessons that I have downloaded because it's too heavy. But if it can be attached in a Google Drive, I will just email me if you need some more material. So with that, I would like to end, and I would like to express my gratitude to MSU-IIT and to the other learning facilitators who are here. I longed for quite some time. I haven't given any lecture. I long to be back into the academe for the purpose of developing the critical thinking and the thinking process of our learners, because that's my foundation. I'm graduate of AP Philosophy, and I will not. I want to apply it again before my own brain surrenders as I grow in age. So with that, again, thank you, and express my gratitude also to your president and to all the vice presidents and deans of MSU-IIT. Thank you very much for this opportunity. If you have questions that I can answer, well and good. If you have questions that I cannot answer, let's pray together that some answers might come for us tonight, to us tonight. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Director Gaspar, Dr. Gaspar Gayona, for that very informative and valuable inputs for our students and teachers. Let us give Dr. Gayona a warm virtual applause. In a little while, we will proceed with the open forum. But before that, please don't forget to sign in for the attendance. The link is posted in our YouTube Live comment section. And an evaluation form will be posted for you to answer. So please don't forget to answer the evaluation form for us to be able to improve on the next sessions. Once you will be able to answer the evaluation form, you will automatically get your e-certificate. Let us now proceed to the open forum, which will be facilitated by one of our very active member of the faculty force in the department, Dr. Roque B. Riquino. Let us give him a warm virtual applause.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ma'am Michelle. We are now in the open forum part of this activity. So at this time we are going to we are now in the open forum part of this session. So is there any question from among the participants? So it seems very quiet. The cloud is very quiet.
Okay. At the last pages of the learning materials, you can find the resources anyway. So you can just continue your own research if there are things that are not clear and you want to learn more about those. The resources are at the last 2 pages of the presentation, but I also would like to request you to go through the thinking curriculum. It's a very important for science and technology, and even not only in science and technology, but I think that it's imperative at this point in time to really identify the type of thinking at every subjects or courses that we are offering, and how to integrate them into the different elements of those courses. But I also would like to emphasize that as we move on with our practice of profession, it's very important to apply systems thinking also. How is communication as courses related to the development of perspectives in entrepreneurial endeavors? How does communication relate to critical thinking, like for example? So it must not be looked into as a compartmentalized subjects, not like before. All these subjects must be seen as an integrated process of learning for all our learners. No? And still, I'll go back to the challenge of the pandemic. No? While we are on flexible learning, while at this point in time it seemed to be very very difficult, but we cannot go back to the traditional mode anymore. Flexible learning has been existing for quite some time already, but we waited for the pandemic to arrive before we were able to realize, or before we realize and maximize its significance. And we cannot go back to the past. We only have to continue developing our own learning systems and processes and maximize the use of technology without departing from the real learning outcomes that we want our graduates to be able to demonstrate. So with that, again, thank you very much. And thank you for not raising questions, because one question might end up to have 30 minutes response.
I think, sir, that there is one. Si Ma'am Rhea.
Okay, sige. Okay. I'm still
Ma'am
here.
Rhea Pedro. She cannot get in.
Ay, so
Okay. So,
is there any more question or regards to
now,
our topic for today, since our speaker is willing to answer those questions? It's a rainy morning here in Iligan City, sir.
yeah, the same here. The rain just stopped. I thought there's another typhoon.
Good that the signal is
good that the signal.
interrupted.
Yeah, that's that's what we are thankful of.
Yes, sir. So there is none. I say there is one. Big.
Hello.
Yes, yes, sir.
Only a small question, because actually I am a technical instructor here and abroad. So we are facing what we are facing now is we already aware the effects of the pandemic on the training, especially on the technical skills. So our challenge now, because we are going to deploy our students for the on-the-job training, but due to the pandemic effect, so uh, the the skills or the competencies that will delivered. So we are facing to to deliver to the students the necessary competency that the students should acquire before going to the industry. But our challenge now is we are aware that industry talks about business. So our challenge is because the industry already, we are already know that they are using time to get profit from their businesses. So for the challenge that I see in deploying our students is normally normally is isa po sa challenge na kinakaharap namin is how can we align these competencies in terms of the required ng industry, because as we know, or what are the talks or alignments that we can address to the industry partners, so that they will be aware also on the situation of our students. So, what are some advices, sir, in your expertise, that you could advise that in order that our student trainee would not affect the normal routine in the nature of job in the workshop? Kasi really, because really we are really affected with this pandemic. So that is why we are worried if even if really the students could deliver because of the lockdowns that we encounter. So we do some adjustment on our time. So many adjustments are made, but I'm also acquiring knowledge on how can we align this situation to the needs of the industry, especially the effect of this pandemic. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, there are. Well, it's really, really difficult. We are not the only ones experiencing it. We are also experiencing it, even in enrollment alone. But there are several ways that we need to shift. As I've mentioned earlier, I'm having an industry engagement with 20 industry councils here in Region 6 because TESDA is shifting towards the revival of the industry board. But the industry board will now function as the sectoral skills council pattern to US and UK. No? There are so many ways I'm really aligning. Kasi we had been talking about for some time, our TVET, our skills development in the country are more of supply driven rather than demand driven. So again, we are shifting towards the full demand driven. So there are examples that I can cite already. When I was in Region 11, we started with the Davao Chamber of Commerce and Industry for a full enterprise-based training, meaning that the chamber will just select one of their industry members in construction, like for example, in IT, in tourism, to deliver the skills development process, including the assessment. And the role that we played there is just to provide them with the scholarships. The second, the ones that I'm doing now with the industry clusters is really to know what are their priority skills, because we always presume that because we have the competency standards, we have the training regulations, it's okay, but it ends up with mismatch, as I said, and this is a recurring issue for us. So the best possible way really to sit down with the industry, and I have even requested to train the industry in competency standards development so that whenever the technology changes, we can just develop the competency standards and then they sit down with the learning institutions on the learning content, or they can elect from their members to become a learning institution itself and become an assessment center itself. No? But that is the journey that we are doing now. And by December, we will be sitting down with the industry to formulate the skills development roadmap, accompanying their industry roadmap, so that in our case, we will know what skills development shall we invest through our scholarship in what stage of the value chain. If it is agriculture, from preparation of land to planting to harvesting to processing to what skills are needed there based on the requirement of the industry, so that we do not have to look up to heaven as if all answers are coming there. So it's not planning behind the desk. It's really engaging the industry, and then eventually creation of the industry board establishment, so that they will do the competency standards, they will learning content together with the learning institution, even labor market information, business incubation, if some of the graduates would like to put up their own MSMEs, assessment, and eventually employment. At this time of the pandemic, the OJT and the apprenticeship is really the ones that's being challenged. As I've said, if your institution has the capability, invest on the laboratory. Okay, that's the one. the laboratory wherein technology is almost the same already with the industry. Of course, it's quite expensive because, as I've said, we are not Singapore. That if your training center for aeronautics has already a 737 or 747 airplane there that they drag from the airport to their center, or they have helicopter. They were able to buy the helicopter. You know, I which of our training centers can afford that, no? So, but that's one of the approaches. Or in cases where the courses that you are teaching or you are that your learners are undergoing needs a certain equipment, and they can buy the equipment by themselves, like your small items that they can practice on, that would be tantamount to the technology that's being used in the industry. That could be, of course, another better way of doing it, no? Or indigenous materials that they can use to practice on the theory that you have taught while the businesses have not yet opened. Or another one is that in the Philippines, you coordinate with DTI. No? Once DTI has already said, nah, they are open, then you can discuss with the industry of how many they can absorb. You cannot just send everybody to flock into the industry because of the social distancing. No? So I believe it's not only this predicament that we are in at this time is not just in the Philippines, but all throughout the world. No? Even schools have already closed, and even online, even teachers and even parents in the US are demanding for in-school, but you cannot because social distancing and other things. It's really difficult, but those are the things that might be possible to do. Use of indigenous materials, purchase of equipment, equipping your laboratory, and then purchase of online programs, because there are also online programs that have simulations. So learning management, as I've said, one is the learning management systems that has the simulation. It's developed by the industry itself. So meaning the processes and even the simulation have been done by the industry itself. It's quite expensive, but in terms of per capita, you can train 300 people at the same time. Why? Because they do not have to sit down in a classroom. They just they just go to the school, open their access it in the Wi-Fi in the school, open their cell phones or their iPad, and they study there, and then they can get the assessment there before they get the assessment center. That increases the confidence of the learner to go into assessment, because right there and then they passed already, and they can just review practically anytime in areas that they have failed in the assessment, online assessment, before they go into assessment center. But these are not cheap, as I've said. But eventually, even for us in Tibet, if things normalizes, if I didn't live with June 11, I could have already bought that. It's 5 million worth. 5 million worth, but a learning management system at the time before I left. But you see, the per capita is you can train 300 at the same time. So per capita, it's not only, I think it's barely 300 pesos per individual. And if the changes or amend or what we call improvement in the system is the after service of the company where you bought your LMS, it will be more advantageous, because if it takes 5 years for you to use that, 300 at every sitting, meaning if you have 1,500 learners that could finish in a year times 5 at 300 pesos is more than enough. You have already recouped your investments. Your ROI is very high because 1,500 times 5, that's 750. Graduates that are well equipped with the knowledge and the competence of the requirement of the industry through simulation. And then eventually, later on, maybe another year of working in the company would enrich whatever they have learned. Because simulation is different from the actual performance of the task in using the technology. But in terms of the knowledge and the confidence, they have already. Sometimes kasi passing the assessment and doing the task is more of personal confidence than competence. Because even if you're competent and you do not have self-confidence, that's why We need still self-efficacy also to be injected into our learning process, so that the individual will be able to believe on what they can do and do it. So that's what self-efficacy is all about. So we really have the difficulty at this point in time. I hope I was able to reduce your agam-agam through that. But I know, because all of us are experiencing that. That's why a lot of scholarship programs have not started, because one is that even if it is online learning, there is a requirement for OJT. So if our policy would change that the OJT can be done later, so maybe our scholarship could also move. Apprenticeship is also difficult to implement in the Philippines. BTS is also difficult. That's why I'm moving towards the full enterprise base, so that you do not have to worry about apprenticeship and BTS, because it's the company that is training their workers and the workers of their member companies, and the assessment as well. So my role is only to give them the scholarship. So that's how difficult it is to be in this time of pandemic. But as much as possible, use every opportunity. If there are small shops there that where your students can do their on-the-job training. Uh, if you have the capacity to enhance your laboratory or your training centers, those are the opportunities. While waiting for what happens in the next few months or even a year. So I hope I was able to tone down the fear. But it's quite difficult also. It's quite difficult because we are talking about technology. If we are only talking about general education, we do not have any problems. But if we are talking about science and technology or technology programs, that really, because we cannot put online the whole of that event. Entrepreneurship can be online, CAD can be online, customer service can be online, front office desk can be online. But automotive, unless you have the simulation. But there are in YouTube alone, there are so many learning materials simulation. But again, of course, those are simulation. The actual practice will come later. But how soon, how late, we do not know, and how immediate are they needed? Because anyway, the companies are also, I think at this time, closed pa man. But of course, they cannot stop learning. Otherwise, if we wait for the pandemic to get to be gone, the knowledge that they have learned might also be gone. So they just have to continue practicing it in so many innovative ways that you can think of as a learning facilitator. I hope I was able to reduce the burden that you're experiencing.
So thank you very much, Dr. Gayona, for addressing the query of Sir Ihares from outside the Philippines. I thought this is national level, globally pala to. So another question is from Ma'am Rhea. May I ask what should be the proper attitude of teachers in preparing students for Industry 4.0?
Again, for the learning facilitators, one is openness and the value of learning. Because as I've said, when we talk about Industry 4.0 in education naman, the most emphasis is on the 21st century skills. So I think the learning facilitators have also to develop this themselves. No? But as I've said, the shifting from the shades on the stage approach to facilitating learning would be very, very helpful for our learning facilitators, because this is also the opportunity not only for the learning facilitators to learn, but also to learn from their learners themselves. And for technology learning facilitators, it's really just like ours. We require our teachers to have an industry immersion. No? Just familiarize yourselves with the new technologies in the companies, because there are really changes in the technologies. But when it comes to values of learning facilitators, it's really the openness to the realities at this point in time. As I've said, what you know today might no longer be true tomorrow. We are not talking about a sentence construction here, that the agreement of the subject and the verb are constant from the very beginning. We are also not talking about the mathematics here, that 1 plus 1 will always be 2. We are talking about how automation works, how robotics works, how these other technologies that they have introduced. Just have to be open to this. Anyway, in technology education, a lot of their teachers are also engineers, so it will be easier for them to adapt to this. But as I've said, just adapt the value of continuous learning. Learning does not age. It's only the individual that ages. As I've said, that's what makes me sad, because I'm older than the computer, so I cannot cope up with the changes anymore. But again, maximize the opportunity that you can still learn, because that would be very important when you facilitate learning of your learners. No, doesn't have to be an expert on something. As I've said, gone are the days when the expertise relies on the teachers. Mastery is one, because the learners can also do research, learn by themselves. What's important is you facilitate their sharing and learn from them as well. I think that's the most that I can give as value of teachers. I always say this when I was teaching still in USEP. I was telling my students, even if I give you everything that I have, you will never be equal to me. And they were saying, no, oh, sabi niya, ang yabang naman ni sir. Sabi ko, you know why? Because I gave you everything, but I earned a lot of things from the 10 of you that I will not be able to return to you because the semester is ending. But I can use these 10 new learnings from you, expound on this, and give it to the new batches, and then get another one from them, even if I have shared everything that I have. So that value of being a learning facilitators. Learn from every opportunity that you can learn, get every opportunity that you can get and learn from, and then share it to others. Because a learning that is not shared is never appreciated. And saying that you know, but you cannot really share is an idiocy for me. So I hope I was able to answer the question.
Okay, thank you very much, Sir Gayona. Another question from Sir Alan Vergara. Good morning, Dr. Gayona and everyone. According to your slides previously presented on the Industrial Revolution 4.0 or the Industrial Internet of Things, and further stated that but times are indeed changing and teacher will need to adapt and grow, not to fear of being replaced by robots. That won't happen, I am certain. The word Internet of Everything has already existed, that maybe will become Industrial Revolution 5.0. Is there a possibility that this will replace teachers with robots?
If you believe that robots can feel, then maybe. If you believe then that robots can think on its own without being programmed by the person, by the human beings, then maybe. Okay? So robots are made by humans. You don't create something that will replace you, di ba? Robots are programmed by humans. Even the chips that are placed in robots are created by humans. If there are no more humans, who will do this for them? Who will, like for example, who will organize the knowledge that you will place in robots? I don't believe so. In the context of our faith, if God intended to have robots replace humans, then he could have created robots in the first place without creating humans, because the humans are more problematic for our gods than the robots. Di ba? Robots don't rebel, robots don't commit sin, robots don't get angry, robots don't get hungry. No? But if that is the intent of the evolution of the world, you know, then he could have created the robots without creating the humans because more problematic to manage humans. I don't believe that robots could replace teachers. There's no way. Huh? Where can you see a robot getting pregnant? So you see, that's a simple thing. If all these things that are attributes of humans can be put in a robot, then maybe. But you cannot. You cannot. Emotions, thinking, feeling, relating to others, in a constructive relationship. Those are the things that you cannot put in the chips or in a robot. They can answer questions because they're programmed to answer questions, and questions have already been programmed. But can they think? Can they ask questions that are not in their program? I don't think so. I don't think so. So I don't believe that robots could replace humans. But
Okay, thank you.
robots and humans can work together. Yeah, that's imperative. They can work together, and they must.
Okay, so thank you very much, Sir Gayona. Another question is, do you have an OER, online open educational resources or freeware to recommend, sir, that we can visit where we can let our students use online simulations to develop skills, sir?
There are a lot. There are a lot of learning management systems already. Practically, when we shifted to flexible learning, I did my own self-study on Google Classroom, Blackboard. There are, you can do your research on the internet. What are where the simulations are. When I was in Davao, I was surprised when I entered the room of my drivers. They are viewing YouTube, welding in YouTube. They're looking at several fabrications like ram pumps and in YouTube. In YouTube. So there are a lot. There are already a lot of online materials. Of course, they cannot replace, of course, the what's happening in the industry, but at least you can already see how the knowledge that you learn in the classroom or in the learning venue are applied in fabrication of a multi-purpose dryer, in a fabrication of ram pumps. So of course, those are application of principles. So you can see, try YouTube. You can see a lot of that. But there are also those that are marketed. Sometimes they're even using Facebook now for telemarketing. I've spent a lot already in Facebook buying power tools. You see, so it's really prevailing. When we were in Indonesia, we went to a very big department store. There's nothing in their shelves because people were already using online learning, online marketing, Lazada and others. So,
Okay, so thank you, sir. Another one is, any suggestions on how we can implement and manage our OJT during this time of pandemic? What are some things to compromise and adjust where our students will still be safe at the same time learning the important competency?
at this time, unless the local government unit gives approval, you cannot get out. Here in Iloilo City, not until the mayor permitted, we cannot even accept enrollment. Much more for OJT. For the OJT, you really have to talk with DTI. Talk with DTI because DTI is the one giving permits to the business establishment to open. Of course, you don't expect them to absorb everybody. They'll still be limited because of social distancing and the other health protocols. But you coordinate with DTI. And if you have, as I've said, if you have the opportunity to improve your laboratory, then go simulations and others, better now while waiting for the opening of the businesses. But if it is necessary for them to go into OJT by this time, you coordinate with DTI because that's what we are doing because DTI is the one giving permit to businesses to open. but it will not be the same number of people that they will absorb, of course.
All right. So thank you very much, Sir Gayona. Another one is how can TESDA provide support to the ed schools in preparing students for Industry 4.0 this pandemic and beyond pandemic time?
It's really now. I'll just share to you what I did here, because this might also become a national activity. The Regional Technical Education Skills Development Committee in Region 6 is already with the RDC, with the Regional Development Committee. And our discussion here is that because if you read the policy of the Balik Probinsya program of the government, uh, there is what you call Balik Probinsya Council, which is also the Regional Development Council. One of the function of the Balik Probinsya Council is ensure the continuity of formal education, and that is the ladderized education. So what we will be doing here in Region 6, because our RTSDC is already with the RDC, is to come together, DepEd, CED, and TESDA. Now, remember, we have started that there in Davao, the credit transfer system. Unfortunately, it only practically the ones who were involved by that time were only CED and TESDA. But now we have to involve DepEd, because the senior high school level of TVET track now, which is they said they will return to TESDA, but still with them. But you cannot wait until the time comes that it's returned to us. So we just have to sit down. Now, as I've said, we are undergoing now the industry engagements, and the industries have already lined up all the competencies that they need for their workers. So we will bring that into our RTSDC, where DepEd and CED are members, and discuss how the senior high school, TVET track, and then TESDA or TVET proper, and then higher education could work together, and then maybe define the credit transfer system at our level here in the region. While there is also a working group in Manila working on the credit transfer system. But I do not know how long will it take for them to come up with that. But this is an opportunity for us here in Region 6. So that's how I see it. As I've said, it's quite difficult to roam around during the pandemic. The most important thing that we can do at this time is to prepare for the post-pandemic. Because we might be caught in surprise again what will happen afterwards. At this time, when we cannot move together, we do online consultations with the partner agencies. And if there is a possibility, if you're only 10, gather in one place and do the workshop, agree. So that, anyway, it's already December. What can we do in 1 month anyway? So I think in my case here, the first 3 weeks of December before the December break will be the formulation of the skills development roadmap of the different industries accompanying their industry roadmap. So that it's clear for me to where to invest my scholarship next year. And in that process, CHED and DepEd will be involved, because there is the vet in higher education, there is the vet also in DepEd. But how we will link together so that we do not have to repeat. Diba? Like for example, the curriculum of senior high school is bedecked already of 21st century skills. Then they have already the STEM. Why do we have to repeat at our level? We just have to credit it practically so that it will be shorter for them to finish the program in Tibet. It will also be shorter for them to finish your program later on sa institutions of higher learning, if we have established a credit transfer system. So for me, that's the most important thing that we can do at this time. We are in a pandemic. We cannot move. The only thing is that let's just prepare for the post-pandemic. That's the best thing that we can do, rather than be caught again flat-footed by the reality or requirement of the post. Remember that the post-pandemic will be very, very busy when it comes to economic recovery, and education is always is one of the key to economic recovery, diba? Because that is the only equalizer between the poor and the rich. The only equalizer is the education. So at this point in time, that's the only thing that I can really say sanely prepare for the post-pandemic, because they will require all of us in education, in upskilling, reskilling, in skills development, in enriching knowledge, all of this.
Okay, thank you, Sir Gayona. We have remaining 3 last questions, sir. How do we assess genuine and authentic of learning students in an online modality if they are learning the competency we required of them?
But we have I think Director Elcid will discuss that now. We have achievement charts. It depends din naman what are you assessing? That's the question. So of course, you teach what you assess what you teach. So it depends on the materials that you are providing them, and again also encouraging them to enhance their learning beyond the learning materials, and then the type of assessment that you prepare for them to undergo in the online process, no? And then how do you monitor their achievement? So in TESDA, we have the achievement chart, and every time they pass the module, they are given their certificate of achievement that they can accumulate, no? They can even access our TESDA online. You know our TESDA online program, no? So, like for example, some who are really that willing to learn are accessing the TESDA online program. They are modular and they passed there already and they want to continue. Those certificates sa TESDA online program are credited already. They do not have to repeat them anymore. Like in tourism, if they have taken the front office already in the TOP and they want to enroll in the program in tourism, they do not have to retake the front office. They just have to present their certificate. Now, so that's how we monitor the achievement. That's always chicken and egg. What is the learning material? What is the type of assessment that you give? How frequent do you assess? How do you monitor? Are you asking them to submit? How do you award? How do you award the achievement of those that are being measured in the test? No? So it's the system of your institution. But as I've said, we have Director Elcid will share with you the template later on how we monitor the achievement of the learning outcomes.
Okay, thank you very much. Last 2 questions. Any suggestions or innovative ways on how we can implement our laboratory activities such as refrigeration, carpentry, or electricity in a remote modality?
Well, one process of the remote modality is that if you have a partner industry there in the area, no? Like if you have the shops, like for example, you do not have to go into your laboratory anymore. Just have to partner with all those shops around near the location of your learners, and they can just go to the shops. And another one is that if there are simulations that you can access in the internet online, that's another one. No? So those are the possible things that I can, or what the ones that I mentioned before, the learning management system that has the simulation. But if you want the actual, one thing is that if DTI has allowed the shops to open in the vicinity, you can partner with them so that they do not have to go into your laboratory. That has been done before. They just partner with the shops near the localities where your learners are, maybe by memorandum of agreement or whatever instruments you can develop, so that your learners do not have to go to your laboratory in school. They just have to inform you that they are in that shop. And of course, the chefs must know what the learning outcomes that are expected, so that they would also know what to guide the learners in their performance of the tasks.
Okay, last question from Dr. Joel Misanes in USM Kabakan, North Cotabato. Is COVID-19 experience causing some universities to go bankrupt or become smaller in size and offer cheaper education?
Yes, or is it happening, or what? The question is, well, there are. I do not. I well, the information we got from news is that there are a lot of learners that have transferred back into state universities from the private universities. So it's almost the same in our case. No? There are a lot of TVET institutions that have closed down their programs already because one is their program has not been prioritized. The second is that they cannot really get enrollment. In terms of the universities, the ones that I heard is that even in basic education, there are a lot of learners that went back to the state universities and colleges and from private institutions. So I do not know if it resulted in closing of the universities, but so far that's the one that I got from the news, that the state universities and colleges were flooded by the learners from the private colleges and universities that transferred during the pandemic. Well, of course, it's not only during the pandemic. It also was triggered by this UAQT, Universal Access to Quality Education, and there were a lot also of learners from the private colleges and universities that transferred back to the state universities and colleges. Certainly, if you do not close your institution, the consequence of that is really to reduce operations. That's the consequence. Sorry. So that's the consequence of it. But those are the information I got from the news. I'm not really familiar. I'm not really familiar with them. With
Thank you
whether
very much.
here in Iloilo, wala. There's none.
Yes, in the government, the SUCs still going on. Thank you very much, participants, for your questions and answer portion. I may now give the time to our MC.
Thank you very much, Dr. Gayona, for answering the queries from our participants, and also to Dr. Riquino for facilitating the forum. To show our grateful appreciation to our guest speaker this morning, we shall now present the certificate of appreciation to our speaker. Let me read the citation. MSU-IIT Institute of Technology, College of Education presents this certificate of recognition to Dr. Gaspar S. Gayona in being the resource speaker in today's webinar session with the topic, the teaching of technology education subjects in the time of pandemic. During the webinar on technical vocational education in an innovative and flexible modality, held November 23, 2020, signed by Dr. Amelia T. Buruan, Dean of the College of Education, and Socarno D. Tanggol, Chancellor of MSU-IIT.
Okay.
Once again, Dr. Gayona, thank you very much.
Thank
Let
you.
us
Thank
also
you.
acknowledge our viewers and participants watching via YouTube Live by giving them a certificate of participation. Let me read the citation. MSU-IIT Institute of Technology, College of Education presents this certificate of participation for having participated in the webinar Technical Vocational Education in an Innovative and Flexible Modality during the talk on the teaching of technology education subjects in time of pandemic held on November 23, 2020. Signed by the Dean of the College of Education, Dr. Amelia T. Duan, and the Chancellor of MSU-IIT, Sukarno D. Tangon. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us in today's webinar. We have learned a lot from this, and these are the key points that we should remember from this session. On the future of education, there are 8 key trends that are driving change in the world of education. And these trends will define the size, scope, and speed of the emerging system along with the need global scale adoption. The teachers will have many options to consider as the changes begin to happen. Some will work as coaches and tutors to students needing for help. Others will be event planners and designers who will re-engineer the social side of learning. The 21st Century Learning by Barnett Berry, the powerful learning demands on well-prepared teachers in and out of cyberspace. Sarah Brown Wesling, where learning embodies an approach to teaching that marries content to skill. Karen Cator, educators can leverage technology to meet the emerging educational needs of this generation. The key to successful educational change is to link to strategies on teacher development and school development. There are many attributes that could be used to describe an educator for today's modern student. The essential attributes are a collaborator, a visionary, and cultural proficient who is sensitive to equity and assess issues within the classroom, who can incorporate best practices to create highly engaged classroom. Effective teaching is the heart of education. Good teachers create environment of students work together as active learners. Tomorrow will be our third session for the webinar series entitled The Role of TESDA on Skills Transfer Among Technology Education Students in the Time of Pandemic, from 9 o'clock a.m. to 12 o'clock noon. To our dear students and participants in the field of technology education, you may participate interactively via YouTube Live. In behalf of the Department of Technology Teacher Education, we would like to give our deepest appreciation to our participants and our speaker. I am Assistant Professor Michelle Samantha Gutierrez, your moderator for this session. Thank you and stay safe.